Most software engineers trying to escape the 9 to 5 make the same exact mistake. They hear start a business and immediately jump to building the next billion-dollar SaaS company. But that is a trap. It's the number one reason that most developers actually burn through their savings and end up right back in the cubicle. The truth is that there's a much faster, lower risk path to a 7-figure business that leverages the skills that you already have. And I know this works because it's exactly how I myself quit my Fortune 500 job as a software engineering manager and built a 7-figure B2B consulting firm from the very ground up. So in this video, I am going to give you the full 4-step playbook to go from developer to owner by building a business that actually gives you true freedom. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the ultimate guide to starting a software business as a software engineer. First off, what we'll be covering in today's video is the 4 following things. So the prerequisites that you as a software engineer need before you start a business, because truth be told, there are certain prerequisites that you have to meet before you decide to go down the actual path of becoming a business owner yourself. Then we'll be talking about how to choose a business model and what business model you should choose based on your own strengths and weaknesses. And then we'll dive into how to get your first 10 to 20 high-paying clients. And afterwards, we'll dive into continuous improvement. The last section is largely for your long-term vision, which we'll discuss, but it's mainly for how to actually expand your business to the point where either A, you later wish to exit it for a big multiplier, or B, you wish it to run autonomous, so it's just like a cash cow, it just prints you money. But without further ado, let's jump right from chronological order. So our first point of action, which are the prerequisites. Now, I urge you all, everybody here, to pay careful attention to the prerequisite section, especially because there's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to be discussing that not many people have really thought of before. And this is largely from, I'm tailoring a lot of the information here from my own personal experience through all the mistakes that I went through and what I learned. And I'm just going to give it to you right now so you know what to not to do and what to do. And with that, actually, for each section, we'll have an action item block at the very end of the section. I can show you right now, but these are all action items that you'll be able to actually take a look at and do once we cover the entire section. But right off the bat, let's just start with self-assessment. So let's imagine that you're building a house, and with pretty much any construction that you're going to do, right, before you set the actual foundation, you need to ensure that the ground is stable so your building doesn't collapse. You need to make sure that all your materials are ready and the blueprints are in place. Just as you wouldn't start this construction process without these essentials, you can't build a successful business without meeting the necessary prerequisites first. And pretty much with anything we really set out to do, there are certain prerequisites that we have to meet. And it's important to note that starting a business is no different. And a successful business is a lot more difficult, actually. So we first have to assess our own skill set to see if we're capable of building a successful business. When I'm talking about a skill set, I don't just mean our hard skills. So I mean both hard and soft skills. We'll get into that later. But for now, you should know that already as software engineers, we already have a strong foundation in problem solving, technical expertise, and logical thinking. But building a successful business requires a lot more than that. And it requires a lot more than just your hard skills. It requires a completely new set of tools you might not be familiar with yet. So before we lay the first brick of our entrepreneurial venture, we first want to ensure that we have equipped ourselves with the right knowledge and mindset to support the weight of what we're about to build. If we rush things, if we don't build a proper foundation, then a couple months down the line, a couple of weeks down the line, our business can just completely crumble and we'll just look like a fool and we'll blame everybody but ourselves. And, we'll just question, what do we do wrong? What happened here? And I'm speaking from experience here. A couple of the ventures that I first went through, it is extremely important that we set the foundations correctly. So by recognizing this fact and addressing these prerequisites, we essentially set up ourselves for a smoother construction process, and we avoid the big mistakes and actually build something that can stand up to the test of time. And we talked briefly about the mindset to support the weight of what we're about to build. And I want to expand on that a bit. You see, as a software engineer, before we get into entrepreneurship, before we become a business owner, there's a very big mindset shift we have to gap. There's a very big bridge that we have to cross, in a sense. And to actually succeed as a business owner, to actually succeed as an entrepreneur, we must adopt a completely different mindset than that of a developer. So you currently, as a software engineer, you must adopt a completely different mindset than that of a developer. And if you're asking, well, what's the mindset of a developer? Well, as a developer, right, your primary focus is solving very specific technical problems. You constantly ask how to make something work, whether it's writing code or debugging, but you never really question the why. And your work is largely project-based with very clear instructions and deadlines, right? And your success is measured by how efficiently you complete these tasks and contribute to the larger project as a whole. However, as a business owner, it's completely different. Instead of the how, you have to focus on the why, right? So you need to understand the purpose behind the problems that you solve. As a dev, you don't necessarily question the purpose. You just do what you're told, right? You're given a problem and you're told to find a solution, but you don't necessarily care why the problem happened in the first place. You know the problem's there and I need to solve it. As a business owner, that's reversed. You need to understand the purpose behind the problems that you solve. And your role changes from an executor of tasks to more so a creator of tasks now. And another thing that I want to talk about is in terms of the mindset. Many people don't talk about this, but it's important to note that entrepreneurship is inherently risky. It comes with more risk. That's the meaning of entrepreneurship. More risk, greater reward. So you'll definitely need to step into certain uncertainty. You'll need to make calculated decisions, and you'll need to grow comfortable with the unknown. You'll need to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. And this shift in mindset is extremely important. That's why it's a prerequisite. You need to focus less on solving technical issues and more on understanding why these issues actually exist in the first place. So why did this problem occur? Before you get to the solution, you need to first understand the problem. And only when you truly grasp the why can you build something meaningful and sustainable, right? So with this, we discussed sort of self-assessment, understanding our soft skills and hard skills, and then we discussed the mindset shift that you need. And now the third prerequisite that I want to discuss is the financial cushion. So there's an interesting story I want to talk about here, and that actually resonated with me quite a bit. And this is the story of Hernan Cortez. Now, I don't know if many of you know him or not, but he was the person actually in charge of conquering the Aztec Empire. And in 1519, when he arrived in a new world, he gave out the order to burn all their ships. So keep in mind, this is 1519, right? They just discovered a new continent. They arrived with their ships at this new continent. It took them months to make this journey. And the captain says, who orders his own men to burn all their ships. And this is largely where the term, as they say, burn your bridges, right? You can think of it that way. This is literally the perfect depiction of that. They come to a completely new land. They've never been there. It's completely unfamiliar. And they decide to, okay, we're here to conquer. And to make sure we need to do it, we need to make sure we don't have a plan B. So what they do is they completely abandon their plan B. So of them retreating on their ships, they burn their ships. And despite being vastly outnumbered, Cortez and his forces actually captured the Aztec capital in 1521, 2 years later. And this is extremely not only inspirational, but it also gives you kind of a secret of human potential that we'll talk about shortly. But whenever we're starting any business venture or just any big venture really in our lives, we often think that we need a financial cushion, at least a few months of living costs before starting a business, because it feels safer, right? It gives us a fallback if things go wrong or in case things go wrong. And while this might sound smart before you get started, it could actually be holding back your true potential. Let me explain. You see, throughout my journey, I've seen mainly two types of successful people, or I should say hyper successful people. Some who carefully manage every single risk, I call them proactive people, and some who just dive in headfirst without any safety nets. I call those people reactive people. And I want to make a note here, neither approach is better. So they both have their pros and cons. I've seen both of them, both are extremely successful, both can be not successful, right? But nevertheless, one isn't necessarily better than the other. And in hindsight, the best way forward, in my opinion, is actually finding a balance that works for you. And me personally, I'm more so lenient towards the reactive route, as that's what works best for me. But I know other people who slightly lean towards the proactive route, but they still have a good balance of both. But you first actually need to understand where you fall. So if I were to let me draw a line here. And if we call this side of things, the left side the proactive and then the right side reactive, all of us watching this video are going to be somewhere in here, right? Somewhere on this line. So I'm more so over here. I'm more so on this side. So if I draw the middle over here, you need to find out where you are on this line right here. Are you maybe more so of a proactive person or hyper proactive person? Are you maybe a hyper reactive person? Are you maybe smack dead in the middle? You need to understand where you are, because if you don't know where you are, then you've probably never been in a situation where failure isn't really an option. And if you've never been in a situation where failure isn't an option, then you don't know your full potential, because that's the only case where you're truly pushed to the brink that your inner potential can actually come out. And on the opposite end, if you always act without thinking things through and you just rush things, you don't pay any attention, it's time to actually add some strategy and see the difference that it might make. So whether you're here or here, there can be a lot of things that you need to be doing differently, but you wouldn't know that until you take a look at yourself and understand where you fall on this line. And once you finally understand where it is that you fall on that line, what you need to do is what I call the 3-6-9 year outlook. So while pushing yourself is important, having a long-term vision is equally crucial, because the ultimate goal of your business isn't necessarily to make more money. Sure, that's one of the things that you get, but it's actually to gain freedom. And in my case, before I started my business, I had my own 3, 6, and 9 year outlook, right? So personally speaking, in my first 3 years, I wanted to reach a specific income goal, right? And I wanted to pay off any debts that I had. And this stage for me was more so, about building a stable foundation for my future, stabilizing my finances, and preparing for bigger opportunities. And then in the 6-year outlook I started thinking of how I wanted my life to evolve, right? I wanted to invest in property, maybe other ventures, other businesses. I wanted to start a family, potentially relocate. And the goal here was for me to expand my wealth outside of just money, right? Focus on bigger life goals. And finally, year 9, it was more so about long-term sustainability. So I wanted to potentially maybe exit my business, maybe have an exit plan for the business, make multiples, like millions, right? Like 9 figures, 8 figures, whatever the case, and maybe move on to something else or just call it quits there. But what's so interesting about a 3, 6, 9 year outlook, as we'll get into later, it's that you'll almost always beat these year outlooks by an insane margin. So I reached my 6-year outlook before my 3-year mark, right? So where I thought I was going to be at the 6-year mark, I got it before my 3-year mark. And so now completely my new 3, 6, 9 year outlook is changed, because every year it literally changes. Every year I surprise myself and I have to set new kind of vision, right? I need to set up a new long-term vision. And this is going to be the same exact case for you, because we always tend to think of, if our potential is, let's say, here, right? We always tend to think of ourselves around here. And whenever we set a goal, we tend to set the goal somewhere in this range, either slightly above or slightly below. But our actual potential is always way higher than that, right? And the main reason why our potential is actually that much higher is because of our unique advantages. So every single one of you watching this video has a unique advantage, right? And once you've defined your vision, you've assessed your strengths and weaknesses, and you've understood yourself, the next step is to identify your unique advantages. And there are 3 main factors that will give you an edge in achieving your goals. And those 3 key factors are your location, your network, and your experience. Location, I mean physical location. So where are you located? Does your city offer any strategic advantages to top talent, funding, or networking events? So are you in like a tech hub like San Francisco or New York? And you need to consider both the opportunities and the challenges. Maybe your city is a tech hub, but you have high living costs. You need to evaluate how your location actually impacts your progress. Is it better for it, or is it going to hurt you in the long run, right? You then have to take a look at your network. Who do you know that can help you? Look at your family, friends, coworkers, and acquaintances. Are they in industries or positions that could maybe open doors for you? Think about mentors, investors, or any key connections that could fast track your success. So whatever you want to do, is there anybody that can help you get there just a little bit faster? And last but not least, you need to take a look at your own experience. So you need to reflect on your personal and professional experiences. What have you learned from your work history, life lessons, or even failures that sets you apart from other people? And these unique insights can be extremely powerful tools down the line, because guess what? They are what will set you apart from other people, right? And if you recognize and leverage these unique advantages, you can position yourself ahead of the competition and move more quickly towards your long-term vision. So if we were to discuss action items, This is what you'll be doing right now. So I urge you, first and foremost, do a self-assessment, right? You need to assess your strengths and weaknesses. So I'm speaking both technical and non-technical, right? So don't just look at your programming languages or the tech stack that you know or how good you are at web development or whatever the case, right? Don't just look at your software engineering skills or more so technical skills. Look at your soft skills as well. List what you can do to improve them as well. So let's say you're extremely good at your technical, but then your non-technical is lacking. List what you can do to sort of improve your non-technical. And then you need to focus on the tasks that provide the highest leverage. So I call these the 10x tasks to maximize the impact of your time spent. So if I were to give you an example, right, let's say for my communication skills, I'm good at clearly explaining technical concepts to non-technical team members, and I can effectively communicate ideas in meetings. As for where I can improve, I struggle with public speaking and often find it challenging to articulate my thoughts in high-pressure situations. So I now know, okay, I'm good at this thing right here. I'm bad at this thing, so I need to do a 10x task to improve this thing right here, right? I struggle with public speaking. And I go through the list pretty much of every single one of my technical and non-technical skills that I'll be needing. So my negotiation, leadership, sales and marketing experience, and so on and so forth. You get the point. And after I do a self-assessment of that, I'll then move on to my mindset shift. So what you need to do is you need to shift your mindset. You need to stop thinking like a developer. I cannot stress this enough. You need to start understanding the why behind everything you do. Adopt the mindset of a creator, as creation is the core of any business. Stop being just a robot who executes tasks. You need to start leading and thinking like a creator, more so understanding the why in everything you do, not the how. The how will always come if you understand the why. Then you need to evaluate your financial situation. So I'm sure this is a big concern for everybody watching this video. You need to understand whether you're proactive, so you're calculative, or a reactive, so like a risk taker in your approach to business. You need to identify where you stand and where you need to grow to balance the risk and strategy effectively, right? And this is largely the main point of this is for you to understand, are you going to be stronger in situations where you maybe don't have as much going for you and you have really no choice but to succeed? Or are you going to be stronger in situations where you have everything planned out, you have all your finances planned out, week to week, you know what you're going to spend, how you're going to do it, and you just have everything strategically laid out? What kind of person are you? And until you actually look at yourself and identify who you are, because some people might have misconstrued ideas about who they are. I always thought I was a calculative person, but it turns out I was a risk taker. I did extremely well in high pressure situations. And so I didn't know this about myself until I put myself in those situations. So that's your third action item. And then your fourth action item should be to create a 3 to 6, 9 year outlook. So map out where you ideally want to be in 3, 6, and 9 years down the line. And chances are you'll completely crush your goals way faster than expected. So be prepared to reassess and adjust as you achieve more than you anticipated. And then last but not least, your last action item in this case will be to actually identify your unique advantages. So your action item here is to list the unique advantages you have over others. So this includes your physical location, right? Your network, your experience. And these will not only serve as kind of like a confidence booster to make you realize, oh wait, like I have pretty decent amount of advantages over other people, but they'll also be your justification for why you need to become an entrepreneur as a software engineer, right? Because already one of the biggest unique advantages that you have is you're a software engineer. That's already pretty much doing better than 90% of the population in the world, right? And it's that other 10% where your location, your network, and experience has to play a factor. And once you do all these action items, it's then time to move on to the second section of choosing a business model. Now, before we actually dive into what business models are out there and which one you should choose, let's first understand what I call the SaaS curse, okay? So as software engineers, we are pretty much programmed to think of SaaS when it comes to creating a business. And why shouldn't we, right? We see startups being valued at billions of dollars. We hear about massive exits. We look up to figures like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. And that's why it's no wonder that there are legit millions of software engineers trying to build the next Facebook or Google, right? And I refer to this as the SaaS curse. And unfortunately, it is a legitimate curse plaguing software engineers. Sure, you can follow this path if you want. You can try to create the next Facebook or Google, but do you actually realize that there are countless other opportunities available to you? And in my case, like in my situation, I would even argue that those opportunities are much better. And as a software engineer, your real advantage lies in your deep understanding of technology and ability to create using that understanding. So you can always quickly adapt to new advancements and leverage code to solve technical and non-technical problems. And if we decide to just step outside of the SaaS bubble that we place ourselves in, we'll see that there are many other solutions we can build, solutions that don't have to follow the traditional SaaS model. And the possibilities are pretty much endless if you're willing to think creatively and break out of the mindset that SaaS is the only way to succeed. If you're wondering, like, okay, but you say that, but what is there for me to do outside of SaaS? Well, let's actually take a look. So, what business model should you actually choose? The answer is pretty much simple. You need to choose a model where you can leverage code. And there's two main paths that you can follow when it comes to businesses as a software engineer. You either got to go the product-based model, right? So you're going to create and sell software products directly to customers. So this would include a SaaS, this would include a subscription-based tool or software that's licensed to other businesses or developers. Or B, you would do a service-based model. So you can use your own coding skills to provide a service, such as maybe automating processes, consulting, or building custom solutions for clients. And your software supports the service, but the revenue comes from delivering that service. I created a software completely from scratch, pretty much just utilizing Python that helps analyze data. So we input data into it and it helps analyze it. And I spent about a month and a half on creating this software. And while I can technically have this as a SaaS, I decided to use this on a service-based model. So I have this on a back end to help me with my actual service that I'm providing, and it just supports the service. It's not the literal service, it just supports it, and the revenue comes from me delivering that service. I'll talk about that later. But in this case, if you're deciding to choose, okay, do I go with a product-based model or a service-based model, you need to identify your actual strengths, weaknesses, and unique advantages, because that's what's going to guide your decision. So if you remember, I said only move here if you did the action steps for the first section. This is what I meant. Your self-assessment, your strengths, weaknesses, and unique advantages should guide your decision here. So you need to choose the model that gives you the most leverage based on your long-term vision. So you just remember that product-based models, they have a higher ceiling for growth, but they are more challenging to get off the ground. So I would only recommend you guys to go to a product-based model if you have somebody in your network or experience that will give you that leverage over other people. If you don't have anybody in your network or experience to actually help support that, I would not start off from a product-based model. In my personal opinion, I believe it is not only a little bit difficult to get started, but the opportunity cost of not doing a service-based model when you don't have the proper backing that you need for a product-based model is just going to hurt you in the long term. And with a service-based model, sure, your ceiling might be a bit lower, but at least they're easier and faster to start. So they allow you to generate revenue a lot more quickly, within days, if not weeks, right? And essentially, you need to choose a path that best fits your skills, vision, and risk tolerance. So as I mentioned before, if you take a look at your location, network, and experience, and you have an extremely overwhelming advantage, this isn't going to be many of you, to do a product-based model, a product-based business, you can do so. But for many of you, myself included, when I started off, I did a service-based model. So you can utilize code to actually create a software that supports the service, but the revenue comes from delivering that service. There is a little caveat here in that many of you could possibly, instead of literally just doing consulting, you could build custom software solutions for other people. So you can kind of be a quote unquote staffing company in a sense, where you have your own developers and you create custom software for other companies. In that sense, you're not technically a SaaS, but you create multiple SaaSes for other people, right? So technically, you're still a service-based model. And it doesn't really matter which one you choose. Whatever one you choose, you're going to have to do market demand for, right? And the important thing here is that once you've actually chosen your business model and the one that ideally provides you the most leverage, so the one that ideally fits the best with your network, location, and experience, then the next crucial step is to understand the market demand for your solution. So no matter how skilled or innovative you are, your business can only succeed if there is sufficient demand for what you're offering. If you're offering something but nobody wants it, then you're not going to get any money and it's just going to fail. So you have to make sure that whatever it is you're offering, people actually want it. And pretty much the best way of finding this out is doing market research. So market research is essential to determining whether your solution effectively addresses the pain points of your target audience. And if you'll notice, I highlighted pain points here because, once again, this isn't talked about often, but this is the most important part when it comes to doing market research. Any solution that you'll be creating, right, any problem you're trying to solve, it needs to be one that's causing pain to your customer or the person you're trying to solve it for. So if we take a look at what are the biggest pains in the world right now, right, outside of, let's say, physical pain, right, you'll see beauty companies doing extremely well because a lot of it has to do with insecurities, male and female insecurities. So both boys and girls that have certain insecurities, and it's a really big pain point for them, hence why these companies offer solutions for these pain points. Since we're software engineers, we're not going to be directly be able to spot the pain points like that as easily as that. But if we just spend a little bit more time and utilize our creative thinking skills, we'll start to understand the pain points in certain businesses. I'll bring a couple examples later down the line, but just understand that you need to understand what the pain points are for the customer that you're going to serve, whether be it you're doing a service-based business or a product-based business. And you can do this a lot of ways. When I personally started out, I analyzed the current trends in the market. I decided to look at my competition, see what they were doing, and I just looked at the market saturation as well to identify any potential opportunities that people weren't taking advantage of. So in my case, when I created this essentially AI data analytics company, nobody at the time in my area had that. There was just pretty much normal data analytics people that they would hire, or usually from the big four, right? Deloitte and PwC and things like that. But there was no small business that was doing this. So I'm like, okay, I found the gap, and that was the opportunity they got into. And for product-based businesses, you should focus more so on the scalability and the long-term relevance of your product. So if you're doing market research and you're trying to look at competition, or you're trying to understand the pain points of the customers, the companies that you need to take a look at are those who have been in it for a long term, right? They're in it for at least 5 to 10 years, and they've scaled to quite a large degree. For service-based models, it's more so understanding where you can find the underserved areas, right? So the goal is to specialize your skills in the place where you can have the most significant impact, because the place where you can have the most significant impact means the place where you will generate the most value, which means by law you will get the most in return for as well, right? So for product-based and service-based, it's kind of different focuses that you're going to take a look at when it comes to analyzing current trends, understanding competition, as well as addressing the market saturation, right? And last but not least, it's also important to consider how your offer actually fits into the larger ecosystem of things and whether there's a sustainable need for it. So sustainable is a key word here, because if, let's say, when COVID took place, right, and people were selling masks and hand sanitizer, that wasn't necessarily a sustainable need. That only lasted for 1 or 2 years, right? But then now things are back to normal. So those companies that made a killing off of those selling those, now they're probably not doing too hot because there wasn't a sustainable need for it, right? So all the research you do here will validate your business idea. It will ensure that you're creating a solution that meets real market demand, and it's also setting the stage for long-term success. And once you actually have your business model, you looked at your market demand as well, so you took a look at your competition, you identified the pain points. Now what you need to do is you need to create an MVP, so a minimum viable product. The main reason here is because before you go and just fully invest your time, energy, and money into building your solution, you need to first test it. You need to first make sure that whatever it is you're building, people actually want it. As much market research as you do, as many surveys as people fill out, as many questions as you ask, you're never going to get the true answer to your question until you test it right then and there, until you test the solution that you create, right? And that's where an MVP comes in. So an MVP is essentially a streamlined version of your product or service that includes only the essential features needed to test your concept with real users. So I want to highlight this. Only the essential features, right? You don't need to add in anything extra, and just your core essential feature, that's all that needs to be in an MVP. The main goal of the MVP is to quickly assess market interest and gather feedback before committing to a full-scale launch. So by developing an MVP, you essentially avoid spending excessive resources on features or services that people might not resonate with. Instead, you focus on solving the singular core problem effectively. It can be something very small, but if it's at least the MVP is tailored to solving one problem and solving that problem really well, that's all you need. And so whether you're creating software for a product-based model or you're offering a service through a consultation or agency, your MVP will provide valuable insights into what works, what doesn't, and what your customers truly need and want, right? So this iterative process allows you to refine your offering, gather user feedback, and pivot if necessary, all without the risk and expense of launching at full scale. So this is largely, if So this is pretty much a must for all product-based business models. With service-based business models, you'll still have to do an MVP, but you wouldn't necessarily go spend too much time on it. You can probably get away with one or two kind of sample tries of it, right? One or two MVPs that you create and then test it out. But with a product-based model, you definitely need to have at least, I would say, 3 to 5 MVPs that you do, because each time you create the MVP, you're going to get feedback on it and then change and possibly modify things as new and more people decide to test what it is you're doing, as you get more feedback and as you potentially pivot into something completely different, right? And once you've pretty much already chosen your business model, you've done your market research, you've created your MVP, so now you know your solution is working, and you decide to go all in into this, into you creating an actual standardized solution, a big solution. You need to understand the revenue streams for how you're going to make money with that business model, right? So once you have the business model and an MVP, or at least a clear idea of what you'll be offering if you're a service-based business, your next crucial step is to understand your revenue streams. So establishing how your product or service will generate income is key to ensuring the sustainability and profitability of your business. For a product-based model, revenue could come from subscriptions, one-time sales, licensing fees, or freemium models where you provide basic features for free and then charge for premium functionality. So you'll largely see, right, if we're taking a look at, for example, we saw that Photoshop and stuff changed from a one-time fee to now a subscription model, right? And then, for example, Microsoft Windows and Word and stuff, those are licensing softwares, right? You pay licensing fee for those. For Google, for example, it's a freemium model, but you can upgrade. So Google Drive, if you want more storage, you have the 15 gigabytes for free. If you want more, you upgrade, and that's kind of the premium functionality. For service-based models, your most common revenue streams will be either hourly billing, retainer agreements, so monthly or however, just any type of retainer, project-based pricing, or even performance-based fees. How well you do it, you take a certain percentage of. So diversifying your revenue streams when possible is also essential. For instance, if you offer a core service, you could also provide an add-on at an additional cost. In case of a SaaS product, for example, you might introduce different pricing tiers related to your software. But the important thing here is you need to consider the scalability of each revenue stream and how they align with your long-term business goals. Because you need to make sure that your revenue streams meet the needs of your customers while also helping you predict cash flow and making informed decisions that will drive growth over time. Now, the main reason I bring this up is because when I first started my business, I was actually billing hourly for all the projects that I was doing. And this ended up down the line becoming a big problem. The main reason being, as we got more and more clients, we started needing more and more personnel to actually take care of these projects. And we sometimes had to use the same person for numerous projects. And even though they were spending, let's say, the same amount of time on both, for one, they could be doing better work, and the other, they could be doing worse work. So what ended up happening is you would, let's say, have 80 hours on one project, 80 hours on one project, but the quality wouldn't necessarily be the same. And down the line, this was causing us problems. So we changed to a project fee, essentially now basis. And by project-based pricing, what we have now, for example, if we take a look at, I'm recording this on August 18th. So and already 18 days has gone by in August. And if you take a look, we're already at, let's see, 50,000 there, 105,000. So $113,000 of revenue. And this came from 4 clients. We have one client here that paid us $55,000 for the project, another that paid $25,000. This $8,000 was a change order, and this $25,000 is another new project. But nevertheless, this way, instead of billing hourly, we now bill on a project basis. So we estimate how long that project will take us and what we need to do, and we bill them an amount in accordance with that. We no longer do it hourly. The main reason here is because we now have a very good estimate as to how long it's going to take us. We have a standardized system that we always use, and we make sure that before we onboard the client, we know that it's going to take us this amount of time. We take a look at their internal systems, we take a look at the data beforehand. So before we even onboard them, we know how long it's going to take us to help them. And hence why, before we even start working with them, we know which pricing tier they'll fall into. Hence why you see the price discrepancies here. We have a couple models that we have, a couple tiering models that we have that people can actually go into, and based on their needs, how long the project will be, the price increases. But in this case, we also have what are called change orders. So in case we do a project and let's say they didn't like something or they need something else changed, maybe they forgot to include something in the initial SOW, so the statement of work, we have an offer of essentially a change order where they pay a smaller amount of money to just have one thing either changed or added, one small thing either changed or added. But in this case, when you take a look at this, right, so you'll see $113,000 in about 18 days, but this isn't all profit, right? This is revenue. And I have to take out my costs, my expenses, right? I have to pay the team. So at the end of the day, while this might look like six figures, my profit is not six figures in half of the month, right? So that's why it's important for you to understand the revenue streams and how you'll be potentially making money in a business. And I always talk about revenue, but what's really important are your profits. How much are you actually taking home? How much are you putting in your pocket that you can use later, right? And last but not least, let's take a look at our action items. So when it comes to actually choosing a business model, well, the first thing you need to do is you need to choose between a product-based or a service-based business model. And the thing that's really going to help you do that is your self-assessment. So your strengths, weaknesses, and your unique advantages, which is your location, your network, and your experiences. Combining all of those will allow you to actually form the decision of, okay, do I want to do a product-based or a service-based? I mentioned before, I would recommend for 90% of you to do a service-based model. It's easier to start, faster to get running, and you can instantly get money straight up front. Sure, the ceiling is low, but it's a lot easier. And that's the main thing here. For a product-based business, it's actually a lot harder. You're going to need a lot of capital up front. But as I mentioned, if you're part of the 10% who has that overwhelming unique advantage, either through a network, when you know somebody who can help you, or through your experience, maybe you've worked for a startup before, or even, let's say, through your location, you're located at, let's say, a tech hub or something like that, you can definitely do the product-based route as well. So I don't want to discourage you from anything. It's just for many of you, I believe a service-based model would just be a lot more beneficial. And for those of you who are able to do a product-based, hats off to you. Then once you do choose your business model, either product-based or service-based business model, you need to analyze the market. So you need to research your market to understand your competitors, overall trends that you're seeing, and most importantly, you need to identify the primary pain point your business will solve. So this is extremely important, the pain point over here. I talked about how when it came to beauty, right, people were insecure about maybe their looks or whatever the case it is. So it's really easy to look at the pain point in the beauty niche. But as software engineers, whenever we're creating solutions to problems, it might not be too evident as to what the pain point really is. So it's really important for us to double down and really find that pain point so we can use it to create our own solution. And once we hone down on that pain point and we have a business model, whether we're going to do a product or a service, we then need to create an MVP, a minimum viable product. So once we create the minimum viable product, we need to ensure that it only focuses on the core problem, nothing more, nothing less. So it doesn't matter if you're offering a product or a service, you still need some sort of an MVP. And you need to keep it so focused on solving that one specific problem effectively and efficiently without adding any unnecessary features that's just going to confuse the client, right? And once you actually have these set up, once you have your business model and you created the MVP, and you sort of know the pain point of your targets, your pain point of your target customer, you then need to start looking into acquiring your first 10 to 20 clients. So this is probably the most important section of the video here. So I urge you to pay careful attention here. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. So getting your first 10 to 20 clients. Right off the bat, what I recommend is you need to leverage your network. Okay, the best way to get your first few clients is to utilize your network. And there's really the big three, as I call it, in your network. So you have your inner circle, right? So these are your close friends, family, and trusted colleagues. So what you need to do is reach out to these people. These are the people you know well and can easily approach for support or feedback or any referrals. And while they might not always be directly in your target industry, they might not be your target customer, they can probably most likely connect you with somebody who is, right? And when you're talking to your inner circle, do not be afraid to ask for big favors, okay? These are the people who are closest to you. Take advantage of that. Take note of who helps you, and sure, you can pay it back to them tenfold later on. But for these people, really go out of your way to ask for help or ask them to do something for you. This is your inner circle, right? They wouldn't mind asking that of you, so you shouldn't mind asking that of them. This is what the inner circle is all about. Everybody's got each other back. And then once we kind of go outside of our inner circle, we then have our professional network. So these are mainly our coworkers, clients, if applicable, right, and acquaintances. These are people you've probably worked with or just met professionally, and you have direct insights or connections in your field. So these people can provide referrals, introductions, or they can potentially become clients themselves. So once again, you should most definitely reach out to these folks as well. You should definitely reach out to your professional network. Now, with these people, you got to be a little bit careful with regards to asking for big favors, but you can still kind of do so given the right time. And last but not least, we have the extended network. So these are essentially all the individuals you met through events, social media, or just mutual connections who aren't really close to you, but they're still valuable contacts and you have them in your contact phone book, right? So this group can include influencers, just industry leaders, people you've engaged with in communities, right? Or even the shop owner down the street that you usually buy from. And they can help amplify your message and connect you with potential clients through their own networks, or once again, they can potentially become your own clients. But with these sort of individuals, when you're reaching out to them, you got to understand that they are in your extended network. So I'll get into how to discuss how to actually reach out to those specifically later on. But these are really the three tiers of how you're going to be acquiring your first few clients, right? You're first going to run through your inner circle. If you don't get any luck there, you're going to go to your professional network. If you don't have any luck there, then you're going to go to your extended network. If you do what I'm telling you, you will 100% find at least one person from one of these, right? Now, the second point I want to talk about when it comes to getting your first 10 to 20 clients is the most important. So I call this grabbing life by the horns. And the most underrated and overlooked method for acquiring clients is meeting them in person. Now, you'll realize I'm not going to talk about ads, I'm not going to talk about cold email, because to be honest, all these gurus are lying to you, okay? They sit there, tell you about cold emails, they tell you about ads, but they don't tell you that the only time you should run ads, the only time you should run cold email is when you're already at least making $15,000 to $20,000 a month from your offer, right? So it's when you know your offer is doing well. It's when you know it's working. If it's the first time you're doing something, you're just throwing money at advertising without even knowing how to create a good ad, you're just gonna sink. Okay. And when it comes to grabbing life by the horns, you cannot afford to be timid, shy, or afraid of rejection. You need to remember the doctor-patient analogy. So this is something I always like to use, and this is something that really helped me when I was starting off. You need to imagine that you're a doctor, and you imagine you spot a tumor on a patient's x-ray, okay? So a patient comes in your office, they take an x-ray, and then you spot a tumor. You would do everything in your power to help that patient recover because their health is on the line, right? And what you need to do is think, okay, if I would do that for my patient, if I was a doctor, as a business owner, you need to treat your prospects the same exact way. You need to approach them with the mindset that you have a solution to their problems, right? Your offer is the relief to their pain. It's their medicine. It's their life-changing medicine that's going to save their lives. So you need to do everything in your power to ensure that they hear about it. Because just like the doctor, you have the tools to help them overcome their pain and potentially save their life. Excuse me, got to give a quick water break. But let's go ahead and actually see real world examples of client acquisition using grabbing life by the horns. And right off the bat, let's talk about my case, right? So, Bugo, how I got pretty much my first 25 clients, I would say, which came from grabbing life by the horns, as I call it. So, as I mentioned before, a majority of my clients came actually from in-person client acquisition. Most came from me pretty much wearing a suit and a tie and pitching businesses in person. Initially, I just approached local businesses that I was already familiar with as a regular customer, so places I frequently visited, and believed that could truly benefit from my services. So anywhere that I was kind of like a regular at, and I thought, okay, I think these guys could potentially benefit from my services, I just went in and gave it a try. So I had my suit and a tie, I had my business card with me, and I had my company website on a QR code on the back of the business card. And I had a portfolio of case studies, so like a physical kind of binder of a few case studies that I had worked on beforehand, a few companies. And I remember one of my most memorable approaches was pitching my services to a bakery. And if you're wondering, a bakery, that was exactly my thought too, because I never thought that a bakery would utilize my services. I was always going for, since we were doing B2B, I was always going for a lot bigger companies, more so retail stores, clinics, healthcare facilities, right? Home health, hospices, and things like that. Businesses with a lot of money, primarily businesses doing over $10 million a year, right? And the main reason that actually sparked this idea of me approaching a bakery is because every time I went to buy a bread or pastry, the owner would always give me an extra piece. And I always understood it as, goodwill. He was being generous. But one day I would always ask him, like, okay, why is it like every time I come in, you give it to me as well? And I noticed if I came in a little bit early in the day, I wouldn't necessarily get it. But if I came in at night when they were about to close, I would always get it. And he told me, he's like, well, if I don't give it to you, I'm going to throw it away anyway because we're making way too much. So the problem was the bakery couldn't get an accurate forecast on their demand and thus would overproduce goods and would have to discard them at the end of the day. So they were losing pretty much hundreds of dollars every single day due to overproducing goods, be it bread, pastries, anything pretty much that people would come in to purchase. And I realized, I'm like, wait, we could potentially help them because of course, we do data analytics, and I realized we can potentially forecast the demand for them. So I pitched my services. I said, okay, we can do free work for you for one product, right? We decided it was going to be breads as that was the most popular product. And if you pretty much see success with it, let's go ahead and do a paid contract for the rest of the items, the rest of the pastries that you have. And the owner agreed. So we ended up actually working for free. We did a free demand forecast for the breads. It ended up actually being perfect, and they ended up saving a lot of money through that. And then we did paid work for the rest of the items. But there was a very important lesson learned here. It was that opportunities are all around you every single day. You just need to be sharp enough to recognize them and bold enough to seize them. In my case, the opportunity was that I was a regular at this place, right? And I just happened to remember that the one time conversation that I had with the owner, he told me that, they always throw away breads and other goods because they make way too much. So I knew that was a problem. It was a pain point that I can solve. And I was bold enough to actually go in person and offer a solution to that, right? So two things had to happen. Me to spot the opportunity, and two, me bold enough to seize the opportunity. So this is exactly why I refer to it as grab life by the horns. There's always opportunity around you. You just need to see it and actually seize it. So that's just my example. Let's take a look at two bigger examples. So ones that led to billion-dollar companies. So the second one that I want to talk about is Ben Chestnut. If you don't know who Ben is, he's the co-founder of MailChimp. Now, many of you probably know MailChimp now as the email marketing platform, but it actually originally started as a web design company. And after realizing that email marketing was a common pain point for small businesses, Chestnut began offering a simple email tool. And it's actually quite interesting to see that in the case of Ben Chestnut, who made an email marketing solution, his first customers didn't come from ads or cold emails. So imagine a person makes his literal business is all about sending cold emails because that's the problem he sees. And he doesn't get his first customer from sending cold emails himself. How ironic is that, right? But what he did to get his first few customers was he visited local businesses in Atlanta where he actually lived, and he met those owners in person and demoed MailChimp and pretty much showed them how it could help with their marketing efforts. And these in-person meetings got MailChimp off the ground, right? So they had a plethora of businesses that they met with, demoed, and these businesses became customers of theirs. And best of all, these early customers didn't just help Chestnut build the business, right? They also provided the crucial feedback they needed that shaped MailChimp's development later on. And the fact that Chestnut actually built personal relationship with all the clients because he literally had to go in person to deal with these people, it allowed him to have direct conversation with the folks. And this means that anytime he could just ring them up on a cell phone or just go in person and ask about what worked, what didn't, and what features they actually needed and wanted, right? So the lesson here is that don't underestimate the value of personal outreach in the beginning, right? It can be the key to gaining your first customers and also setting your business up for sustainable growth later on, because these same customers will not only validate your business, but they'll also give feedback on how you can improve it. And the third example is, you guys might be familiar with it, is Alexis Ohanian, so the co-founder of Reddit, right? And not many people know this, but in the initial stages of the company, Alexis actually went to college campuses, tech meetups, and conferences to talk directly to his target audience about their platform. They didn't run any ads, and they didn't do any other marketing other than just going in person to certain events and pitching Reddit as a space for open discussion and community building. And this was essentially the entire point, was to encourage potential users to adopt early, right? And the initial user base, which actually came from these in-person engagements, created what Reddit is today. The initial user base not only contributed to the growth of the platform as a whole, but also drove product improvements based on feedback. So before it became really popular and a lot more millions of people started using it, the first initial couple hundred folks, they really honed in on improving the product, and all that feedback Ohanian used to create what Reddit is now today. So while you have millions and millions of people using it, the entire backbone of it was really probably constructed on the feedback of maybe a couple hundred or 1,000 people. And the lesson here, once again, is opportunities are everywhere. You need to spot them, seize them, and you need to use personal outreach to land your first few clients and build lasting businesses, right? A lasting success. I can't stress this enough, but in-person outreach is so extremely powerful. Well, yes, we're in the digital age now. Everybody's on social media, but nothing beats that in-person contact with somebody. And especially nowadays, where a lot of people are always on the phone, they're always on social media, they don't really understand the importance of in-person, right? The actual importance of what in-person meetings can do and in-person client acquisition can do. And the third thing that I want to talk about when it comes to acquiring your first 10 to 20 clients is credibility hacking. So once you actually start using grab life by the horns outreach strategy, you'll naturally begin to acquire clients. So some of these clients you might work with for free to gain experience. Others you'll probably charge a very nominal fee. And a few you'll manage to charge an amount that you're truly happy with. But no matter how much they pay or don't pay, these early clients are gold, right? Because they help you build something crucial, credibility. And this is where what I call credibility hacking comes into play. So what do you have now? You have a handful of clients, right, from whom you under-promised and over-delivered. So this is once again an extremely key point here that I want to emphasize. I'll get into this later, but for any client that you get, be it like if you're going in person or just asking your network or anybody you're pitching, you always want to under-promise but over-deliver to really shock the clients and make them think, wow, this person did an amazing job. It was a steal for me, right? And this opportunity to pretty much showcase the work you've done and how it's impacted them. And the way you do this is not through the typical testimonials that you're familiar with, but what I call the podcast style interviews. So the goal here is to move beyond the standardized, oh, it was great working with them testimonial that you see, right? You want to dive deeper into actually having maybe a deeper conversation with them, something that feels authentic and valuable and not something that's like scripted and just, oh, okay, here I worked with this person, it was really good, this and that, right? And these should be pretty easy for you to set up because you personally acquired these clients and likely developed a relationship beyond just a professional one. So you should definitely leverage that. And what I would highly recommend you do is you conduct an interview where you talk actually with these clients about the specific work you did for them. You ask them how they felt before working with you, what challenges they were facing, and how your work helped solve these problems, right? And you just want to let the client pretty much tell their story. And you respond in kind. You discuss the results you were able to deliver and how it positively impacted their business. The key here is to make the conversation feel natural and engaging, not scripted. And this creates a compelling narrative that potential clients can relate to and trust. And the real key here is that this doesn't only give you social proof, it also positions you as an expert who cares about solving your client's problems. If you're spending that much time, let's say an hour and a half on interviewing a client for a testimonial, that just goes to show that, hey, this person cares this much about their client, especially if you know them on a first-time basis, if you know some of their hobbies because you've been talking about them, but outside of a personal relationship, if you know that much about your clients, then everybody can see that connection. They'll be like, wow, at least it's like these guys are friends, have been friends for like 5 or 10 years. And I want to emphasize this again. These interviews are more than just testimonials. They become trust-building content that showcases your ability to deliver real results. So if I were to explain what regular business does, right? They acquire a client, they get a basic review, they make the review public, and they hope more customers come in from that review, right? And oftentimes if they get a bad review, they're going to lose a customer from that. So whereas what you should be doing is you acquired your client, you under-promise, but you over-deliver, and then you do a podcast-style testimonial. And what this allows you to do is what I call free value hacking, and also leads you to get new clients. But free value hacking is essentially when you now have your podcast-style interviews, right? Your podcast-style testimonials. Each, I would say, about an hour long. If you can get it longer, that's perfect. But I would say an hour is the sweet spot. And you've captured a lot more than just feedback, right? Like the entire hour isn't about just the testimonial itself. And these interviews are packed with valuable insights into the unique and common challenges that these businesses specifically faced and how you help them solve, right? And how you help them solve this problem. And this content is actually valuable not for the reason you might think. It's not only it doesn't only hold immense value because it's a testimonial that showcases how good your services are, but it also highlights not only your success, but it offers actionable information that other business owners in the same industry can benefit from. For example, if let's say I interviewed the owner of that bakery, right? And then another bakery happened to see that interview. Maybe they're like, oh, wait, I am also producing way too much bread. How can I actually help solve this problem? Because no bakery owner is going to ever think of hiring like a data analyst to do that, right? Just no bakery is going to think of that. Baker's probably going to try to eyeball it or hypothetically, test it themselves, or maybe they'll just consider, okay, it's fine if I'm losing $50 or $100 on that a day, right? But if it's somebody who sees that on an interview, the baker might be like, oh, I didn't know I can think of it do that. Like, I didn't know I can do it that way, right? Because it's so out of kind of scope for them in a sense that they'll be able to get free value from it. And this is where the free value hacking comes in, right? The entire point here is to repurpose your testimonials, these podcast style testimonials, into educational content that provides free value to potential clients, right? And these are what are known as lead magnets. So we'll get into this potentially in a future video. But these lead magnets is essentially free pieces of content that you have that you use to get more and more clients. And this is probably the best lead magnet that you can have, is because not only A, do you have a testimonial that vouches for your business, but B, it can potentially help pretty much any other industry or any other business owner that has a business similar to who you were interviewing, right? And here's how it's going to work. The businesses you've helped most likely face challenges similar to those experienced by others in the same industry as them, okay? So whether it's improving efficiency, boosting sales, or enhancing customer retention, this is specifically what we were doing. So this is my example, right? So in our case, whether we were improving efficiency, boosting sales, or enhancing customer retention, our conversations were always full of valuable lessons that could help other businesses improve their own operations, right? And by repackaging these lessons into digestible content, whether you want to do it through blog posts, short videos, or infographics, you position yourself as a knowledgeable expert who understands the specific pain points of that industry. In my case specifically, I had these interviews. Actually, I didn't publish them anywhere, but I had these interviews and I also created actual PDF files, so case study breakdowns of these. And what I would do is whenever I would pitch other people in person, I would hand over the PDF document and I would have the file I would share with them either through an email or something like a Google Drive link where they could watch the interview and see what it is that we're talking about. And a lot of the times, even if we didn't end up working with the person, they took so much value from that interview that applied it to their own business. And a couple months down the line, they asked us, oh, hey, we actually looked at the interview, we implemented it, and we're now up this much money, or we had this success. And we're really happy to see that because down the line, these people can always become our clients. So offering this free actionable content not only attracts potential clients, but also builds trust and showcases our ability to deliver results. And last but not least, when it comes to acquiring clients, if you've actually followed the steps so far, you've already likely secured at least one paying client, right? And you need to actually now leverage that relationship by asking for a referral. And to incentivize them to actually give you that referral, you can offer them something of equal value. So you can offer like a discount, you can do a gift card, or you can have, as an example, a free month of your service, right? And this simple request can open doors to new clients within that network, and it can help your business grow through word of mouth alone. To this day, with my business, it's grown completely through word of mouth and in-person client acquisition. I have done ads, I've done cold email, but that was only after I had a certain offer I was testing. And actually, I didn't get too many clients from cold emails or ads because I was always testing something new, right? I didn't want to go through the hassle and I had the money to spend, so I wanted to test that with the money that I had. But nevertheless, 99% of my clients have come through in-person and word of mouth. And that's actually the highest paying clients as well, interestingly enough. And beyond the referrals, what you need to do is you need to consider forming strategic partnerships with other B2B businesses that you've helped. So for instance, if you've, let's say, developed custom software that automates invoicing, right? You could partner up with a bookkeeping or an accounting firm, and by bundling your automation software with their own services, they add more value for their clients, and you gain new customers and a percentage of the revenue, right? And in return, you pretty much expand your reach, you gain access to a new client base, and you don't have to worry about spending any money or going through the hassle and time of finding these clients on your own, right? So this creates a win-win scenario where both businesses benefit from the partnership while growing their customer base. Now, when it comes to the action items for your actual finding your first 10 to 20 clients, here is what you need to do. So first and foremost, you need to leverage your network, okay? And we talked about the big three, right? Your inner circle, your professional network, and your extended network. So you need to reach out to your close friends, family, and trusted colleagues. You need to ask for any referrals if you can, and any support and feedback about what you're doing. And don't be afraid to request big favors. These are the people most willing to help you. Always keep that in mind. Afterwards, you need to reach out to your professional network. So you need to reconnect with any former coworkers, clients, acquaintances, school buddies from university, whatever the case. Ask for introductions, referrals, or even consider them as potential clients, if possible. Then you need to look at your extended network. So any influencers, industry leaders, or mutual connections you met through events, social media, or online communities, you need to actually use them to amplify your message and connect you to other potential clients, okay? And once you actually leverage your network, once you find these people that you can reach out to, you need to adopt a doctor-patient mindset, okay? So you need to approach potential clients with the confidence of you having the solution to their problems. You can't fear rejection, and you need to treat your offer as a relief they need, just as a doctor would with a patient. So always keep that in mind. And with anybody that you're meeting, I would highly recommend prioritizing face-to-face meetings over virtual ones, because face-to-face meetings build strong relationships and also shows them your energy and expertise while demonstrating how your solution can help solve their problems. And people, whenever they usually meet in person, they get to trust you a bit more because they think, okay, this person went out of their way to come physically to this location despite their busy schedule, right? And once you've actually met your clients in person and you've already landed a few clients and you've done work with them, you need to do what I call the credibility hacking, okay? You need to leverage your early clients by conducting podcast-style interviews. You need to dive into the specific challenges they faced, how you helped them, and the results you delivered. And you need to keep it conversational, unscripted, and engaging to build trust with future prospects, right? So by unscripted, you can have a few key points you want to just bring across. So maybe like 5 to 10 bullet points of, okay, what challenges you faced, how you helped them, this and that. But in general, you want to have things unscripted. So if it gets maybe a little bit off topic, or maybe they want to talk about how, they had a vacation or something, no matter, as long as it's an engaging conversation, it'll be really actually beneficial for you, especially if other business owners are seeing it. Because whenever a business owner sees a completely scripted testimonial where you're asking questions and you're getting the perfect results back, it's a bit iffy, and they realize, okay, there's something suspicious about this. And once you have your credibility hack, right, you need to repurpose content with free value hacking. You need to turn the insights from your podcast style interviews into educational content, be it through blog posts, videos, or infographics, okay? And you need to share these actionable lessons that other businesses in the same industry can benefit from. And you position yourself as a valuable resource who can help them. These are known as lead magnets, okay? And there's a lot of other lead magnets you can do, but in my opinion, this is probably the best lead magnet that you can do. And of course, last but not least, you need to ask for referrals and form strategic partnerships. So don't hesitate to ask your satisfied clients for referrals, okay? And you need to sweeten the deal as much as you can with incentives. So the sweeter the pie, right, in this case, the more they'll do from their end to get you clients. So if you offer like a big discount or gift card or a free service to encourage them to spread the word, they will do so, okay? And when it comes to strategic partnerships, you need to identify complementary businesses and you need to form partnerships to offer bundled services. For example, if you develop custom software, partner with an accounting firm, right, or marketing firm to expand your reach. And you can share revenue and client access. This is a bit of situational, but in this case, if it's such a situation where you can benefit from that, definitely look into that, as it can once again just completely help how you get clients and just reduce the workload on your end. Okay. And once you've actually done these action items, right, and you've gotten your first 10 to 20 clients, we then get into the continuous improvement section. Now, I mentioned in the beginning, right, how when we get our first 10 to 20 clients, we want to position our business for either A, being autonomous, where it's just like printing money for us, or B, where we can potentially exit it, okay? So it doesn't matter which one you really want, it's going to be the same exact process. You need to go through continuous improvement. And if you remember back when we first talked about the first section, we talked about building our house, okay? So let's talk about, well, now we've actually finished building our house. So let's imagine that you finished building your house and you've moved in, but over time you begin to notice that some areas could be better. Maybe a draft comes in through a window, or the layout doesn't flow as well as you'd hoped initially, right? Something's off. So to keep your home comfortable, you rely on the feedback from everybody else living in the house. If someone mentions that the kitchen feels too cramped or the lighting is insufficient, you make changes based on their input, okay? And this process of gathering feedback and making adjustments is essential for maintaining and improving the space over time. And the same exact concept applies to your business. And that's where customer feedback loops comes into play. Because right off the bat, just like how you built your first house, if you're going to build a business, it's probably not going to be perfect the first time around. There's going to be changes you're going to want to make. There's going to be improvements you're going to need to make. So your customers are kind of like the people living in your house. They experience your business from the inside and notice things you might not. So by regularly collecting their feedback through either surveys or just interviews, one-on-one calls with them, you gain insights into what's working well and what needs improvement. But it's not just about listening. It's also about creating a loop where feedback is actively turned into action. Okay. When customers tell you something isn't meeting their needs, you take that information, make changes, and then check back in to see if those changes solve the issue. This is extremely important. And this continuous loop actually helps ensure your business remains aligned with what your customers truly want. And if you integrate this into your business strategy, you're not only going to make improvements, but you're going to build trust and show your customers that you actually care about them, which in hindsight, they're going to spend a lot more money down the line. So just like keeping your house in top shape, regular attention to customer feedback ensures your business remains strong, relevant, and able to adapt to changes needing over time. Now, with that, once we've actually gathered feedback and implemented necessary changes, our next step is refining how we operate day to day. So process optimization focuses largely on streamlining our internal workflows to enhance efficiency and reduce waste. So whether it's automating any repetitive tasks we might do, or improving communication between any teams that we might have, or refining our product development cycle, process optimization ensures that our business runs like a well-oiled machine, right? And this stage is really all about making sure every component of your business is working in sync. By constantly reviewing and fine-tuning your operations, you minimize inefficiencies and free up resources that can be better spent on innovation and growth. And continuous process improvements also help you adapt quickly to new challenges, making your business more resilient over time. Now, this you might not have to worry about initially, but as you get your first few clients, especially as you maybe start running out of time yourself and you need to hire more and more people, you need to make sure that you optimize your processes. You want to make sure that you reduce churn and just reduce any waste, and you want to increase the operational efficiency from the get-go. This is something you should have in mind from the very beginning. Don't leave this for later. Now, as you improve your process and respond to customer feedback, it's essential that you also focus on skill enhancement, both not only for yourself, but also for your team. Because the business landscape is constantly evolving, okay? And you need to stay ahead because, as you know, if you don't stay ahead and you just stagnate, your competition will eat you up, they'll beat you. So you need to constantly update your skill set and expand and learn more things. And you need to do this for yourself and your team. So this could, as a software engineer, this could mean that you need to learn new technologies, you need to master new tools that come out, or it could also mean you need to work on your soft skills. So maybe you got to work on your leadership or decision-making abilities as a whole. And for your team, it could just mean, providing them opportunities for professional development, maybe some training, certifications, or just mentorship. Okay. But by investing in skill enhancement, you ensure that everybody in your business is equipped to handle any new challenges that come your way. You're not going to get caught up by any surprises. And it just not only improves the quality of your work, which, down the line will get you more money, but it also boosts team morale and engagement, which just leads to better performance across the board. So there's really no lose here. It's just all wins. So you got to keep your skills sharp and evolving with the times because it's crucial in maintaining competitive edge and ensuring the longevity and growth of your business. And actually, since we're on the topic of that, one of the most crucial factors for long-term success in business is the ability to adapt. So as you gather feedback, optimize your processes, and enhance your skills, you must also be ready to pivot and evolve based on external factors. So this could be any market shifts, new technologies that come out, or changes in customer needs. Okay. And adaptation is about staying flexible and responsive to the ever-changing environment in which your business operates. This means being proactive, right? So we talked about the proactive and reactive. In this case, this means being proactive when you see trends emerging and being agile enough to actually adjust your strategies when unexpected challenges arise. So whether it's modifying your product to better meet market demand, changing your market approach to align with shifting consumer behavior, or exploring new revenue streams, you need to make sure that your business stays relevant and it's actually still resilient to changing times. And businesses that embrace adaptation, they're not only able to survive long enough, but they're also able to thrive in it. So they make a lot more money year over year. And this just ensures that you're not caught off guard, and 5 years down the line, 6 years down the line, you don't go bankrupt. And to kind of hone everything together and connect everything, you need to make all your decisions based on data. So all your decisions need to be data-driven decisions, because making decisions based on instinct alone can be extremely risky. And you need to make sure that your choices are guided by solid data and metrics. And me running a data analytics firm, I can tell you that so many businesses overlook this aspect. Be it your customer behavior, market trends, sales performance, or operational efficiency, you need to use actual raw data to inform you of your next steps, okay? Instead of guessing what your customer wants or how your product is performing, you need to rely on hard evidence to guide your business strategies. So not only does this approach minimize uncertainty, but it also allows you to make confident decisions that can help you later on make a lot more money. And by consistently leveraging data, you identify patterns, predict future trends, and you measure the success of your efforts with precise precision. And this, once again, not only helps improve performance, but it increases the likelihood of achieving sustainable growth. And data-driven decisions ensures that every move you make is calculated and aligned with your business goals, keeping you on the right track for continuous improvement. So if I were to discuss the action items for this one, there's really a couple things that you need to do. When it comes to customer feedback loops, you need to regularly gather feedback from your customers, be it through surveys, reviews, direct communications. It could be email, text, one-on-one calls, whatever. And you need to analyze this feedback to identify key areas of improvement. If you realize a few customers are complaining about a specific thing, then you should probably most likely try to improve that specific thing. Okay. And you need to actually implement changes based on feedback. You're not just going to let it enter through one ear and out the other. You need to actually implement changes based on the feedback and follow up with the customers to ensure that their needs have been met. But with regards to process optimization, you need to review and evaluate internal processes for efficiency. And I recommend doing this on a monthly basis. You need to identify and eliminate any bottlenecks that you see, or any repetitive tasks that can be automated or streamlined should be done so as soon as possible. And continuously adjusting your workflows to ensure smooth operations and improve productivity is the key to staying ahead of your competition and always being successful. In my case, we have an audit every single month of taking a look at our processes and making sure that everything is as good as possible. If we see something that's lacking, we immediately try to eliminate that bottleneck and address it as soon as possible. Next up comes to skills enhancement. So you need to identify areas where you and your team lack, and you need to either go do training, you need to have team workshops, you need to bring in a mentor, maybe a consultant or somebody to help you further develop your own skills and your team skills. And you need to regularly update and expand your skill set to stay competitive in your industry. And once again, we do this once every 3 months, where we'll either do a training, a workshop, or we'll bring in a consultant to discuss a new skill, or maybe mainly related to soft skills we're worried about. Hard skills, most of them you can learn on your own, but when it comes to soft skills, it's always better to just have another human there talking about it, explaining it, and just showing it in person. Fourth, we have adaptation. So you need to stay informed about any market trends that's happening, emerging technologies, changes in customer behavior, right? Especially nowadays in this world we're living in, with potential for World War III and all the craziness happening. You want to be just updated and understand how that's potentially going to impact your own business. So you need to regularly reassess your strategies, and you need to be prepared to pivot when necessary. And you need to embrace flexibility, and you need to look for opportunities to innovate when faced with challenges or disruptions. So God forbid something major happens, a black swan event, and you need to be able to prepare for that, and you need to possibly already have a plan B for that, right? And then last but not least, data-driven decisions. You need to collect and analyze key data points. So this includes your customer behavior, sales metrics, market trends, etc. And you need to use data to actually guide all of your business decisions. You need to ensure that every single step is backed by evidence. And you need to monitor the outcomes of your decisions and adjust your strategies based on the results that you get. So with that pretty much covers our action items for our last section. And just to give a quick rundown of everything, right? We talked about the prerequisites, what you need to do. So self-assess your strengths, weaknesses, your unique advantages, your network location, and your experiences. And you need to understand those to kind of choose the business model, right? And the business model that you're going to choose, either a product-based or service-based. If you have the unique advantage of potentially doing a product-based, do that. But I would highly recommend most of you starting a service-based either creating custom software for other companies or just doing a consultation type of thing as I'm doing, using the code to kind of build a software that supports the service, but the revenue comes from delivering that service. And you need to actually identify the market demand. You need to target the specific pain points of the customer to understand what it is that you'll be doing for them. And always you want to test things with an MVP, a minimum viable product. Don't go gun-ho, spending all your time and energy into creating something that you're not even sure will work. You first want to test things with just an MVP that targets the core problem, right? And of course, you want to understand the revenue streams to better understand how you're going to be making money and any pricing things that you can do to potentially just increase your upside always. Then we talked about how to get your first 10 to 20 clients. As always, leverage your network is the best way of finding the clients. And in my opinion, the best clients you'll get are also from your network, because it's most likely people that you know yourself, so you know their personality, you know what they like, what they don't like. We talked about the big three, right? The inner circle, the professional network, and the extended network. We then talked about grab life by the horns, the most important section in this entire video, grabbing life by the horn strategy of meeting your clients in person. I gave the examples of myself as well as 2 other individuals who use this in-person client acquisition strategy. And we briefly touched upon the doctor-patient analogy, how you need to be a doctor and your client is the patient. You always need to be caring about them. And in this sense, your offer is the relief. So you need to make sure they know about it, right? And we then talked about credibility hacking. Once you finish the work for your clients, do a podcast-style interview. And this could be an hour long, maybe even longer. But it's not just a quote unquote, a regular testimonial of, oh, hey, this is the work they did for us. It was great working with them, blah, blah, blah. This is more so an actual conversation. And people should be able to realize that, hey, even though, this is between a business and their client, these people talk as if they're friends. These people have a relationship outside of a professional one. People should be able to spot that instantly, because that builds trust in other business owners as well. Okay. And what you'll need to do is actually utilize these podcast style interviews for free value hacking. So you'll offer them as lead magnets to people. You can post them on social media, YouTube, or wherever the case, or just even have them on a one-on-one setting to showcase to people if you don't want it to make it public. But the point here is that people that maybe run the same type of business, or people that are in the same industry as the client that you helped, they'll be able to get a lot of feedback and a lot of help from watching that case study or watching that podcast style interview. Last but not least, you should ask all of your clients for referrals, and you should incentivize them. The more value you offer, the more incentivized they will be to get more clients for you. And of course, look into strategic partnerships as well, something not a lot of people talk about, especially if you are a SaaS business or even a service-based business. If you can partner with another business to, give you a new client base that you might not have gotten beforehand, do so. It's really not going to hurt you in the long run. And then last but not least, we talked about the continuous improvement of how you should constantly ask your customers for feedback to not only improve your product, but also your own service, right? Your internal side and external side. And you need to always optimize your processes, your internal processes, to make sure everything is smooth. Communication is not a problem. And as your team grows, the efficiency stays the same or even increases, and it's not a hindrance. You then need to address the skill enhancement, right? You need to make sure your team is always improving their skills. They're always improving. They're not stagnating, such that your competition doesn't come and beat you and take you out of business. And you need to be adaptable. You need to adapt. We're living in times where anything can happen, really, with potential world war, numerous other black swan events. You need to have that adaptability in case, something happens, something major happens, God forbid, you're able to react to it and at least have a plan in place or a plan of action that you can go forward with. And last but not least, you should always look things through data, always follow data, never based on instinct. Sure, instinct can be helpful and beneficial, but you should always confirm it with data. Data is king here. So any decision you're going to make, especially any big decision, take a look at the hard, raw data to see what it says about your customer behaviors, market trends, and sales, operational efficiency, and so on and so forth. And with that, that's pretty much everything I wanted to discuss. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe. I spent a lot of time on this, a lot more than I initially thought I would. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment in the comments below, and I'll be sure to address all of them. As always, thank you for watching, and have a good one.